Hi, I'm Doug Lambert, Director of Technical Solutions for NRTC. I recently had the privilege of being embedded with two electric cooperatives in Georgia, Altamaha EMC and Excelsior EMC, to help them through disaster assistance of Hurricane Irma. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that experience now. Let's start by setting the stage of the event as it came through. And this is Good Morning America talking about that event.
And Good Morning America, we are live for our viewers in the West, and that's our drone footage of Naples, Florida this morning. Look at that devastation. It's been a tough morning for so many in Florida. Irma's been downgraded. It's now a tropical storm, not a hurricane, but it's left a path of destruction across the state as it makes its way north. That is Jacksonville right now. They are seeing record storm surge this morning. You see that water.
At one point on Sunday, the entire state of Florida was covered by the storm. Such a massive force. Now it's barreling toward Atlanta, and they're facing a tropical storm warning there. And we're now just starting to see images from the areas hardest hit, that being the Florida Keys.
Yeah, the Keys got hit first. Here's what we know right now. Irma has claimed at least 5 lives in Florida, 27 across the Caribbean. It was a Category 4 storm when it first made landfall in Florida, wind gusts topping 140 miles an hour. This morning, more than 5 million customers are without power in that state.
World News Tonight anchor David Muir leading our coverage on the ground. He has been throughout the storm. And our Amy Robach is there as well. She's heading to the devastated Florida Keys for us this morning.
Our team is spread across the storm zone, and our chief meteorologist Ginger Z has been tracking Irma from the very beginning. She starts us off with the latest on its path right now. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning to you, George and Robin and everyone else. You talked about Jacksonville and that record storm surge. Look at this image from above. You can see the almost 5 feet or more than 5 feet in some places of storm surge coming on land. The region got 6 to 12 inches of rain overnight, and that's why we still have a flash flood emergency in the city of Jacksonville. Of course, 125 rescues southwest of there in Orange County, Florida. Still flash flood warnings that include parts of Georgia and South Carolina. So the rain shield is on that northeast side, and that's going to stay that way. So much of Georgia has to look out for significant rain as this tropical storm makes its way toward Alabama. Eventually, it'll become a low into Tuesday, early Wednesday, and then we can stop talking about it. But you got to see this. The timing is tonight for Atlanta. Some of the heaviest rain going to be flying through central and northern Alabama and, of course, Georgia. And you can see right there up to 8 inches, George and Robin.
It is heading that way. All right, Ginger, thank you.
Okay, just to kind of set the stage as far as the timeline as to how I got involved with this project and how I was able to become embedded with these co-ops and how I was able to contribute. So Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, just to back up, around August 25th. And as I'm sure many of you remember, there was massive destruction and flooding from that event. Around that same time, we at NRTC was looking at how we could offer any kind of humanitarian efforts to help in those types of restorations. I knew that Clevist had written an app that about 2 years ago for the purpose of allowing foreign crews to be seen when they come in to assist with outages. A little bit of my background: I used to work for a co-op in Texas, just near Houston, and I lived through several hurricanes. I ran the dispatch department, and we had Hurricane Ike hit us, was one of the most recent ones. Had about 50% of our system off, around 10,000 meters. And had around 400 foreign men on our system overnight. And one of the struggles we had was figuring out exactly where we needed to send the men, and the logistics of keeping track of them as we worked through the storm, through restorations from a safety perspective. So I saw this Clevist worker location app as an opportunity to provide visibility of those guys into the war room as we're going about the restoration efforts. So I suggested to Clevist that we leverage that app, get it out there because it's not really being used yet at any co-ops, and get it out there and demonstrate that value. So we worked with Clevist to get it ready. That took about a week. And it was actually too late by then to really be effective at helping the Texas effort. However, on the 6th of September, Hurricane Irma was on a path to hit Florida. And NRTC contacted the cooperatives within that path, some Florida cooperatives as well as some Georgia cooperatives. And Excelsior EMC responded and accepted the offer for me to come on site and run the Clevis worker location app in parallel with their efforts, and to feed that information into their MillSoft dispatch outage management system using multi-speak. They had 150 men that showed up on site. So I arrived on site on September 7th around 8 a.m. On the 6th. I took off to get down there. I drove. It was about a 7-hour drive from my house. And we began loading the apps onto the crews on the 7th. And we began loading it on the foreign crews on the 8th when the foreign crews began to arrive. Now they had approximately 150 men and women through the mutual aid program and through their own staff that were going to be out there working. So we made sure that everyone who was going to be working on their system had the app, understood how to turn it on and off, and then we also wanted to make sure that we could see each of those guys within the dispatch outage management system live as they drove. And that was successful. We were successful at doing that. On the 10th of September, which was a Sunday, the EEMC's territory, Excelsior's territory, did feel the full impact of Irma as a tropical storm. So this is the app that we loaded here. On the left, you see the worker location app. On the right is the web portal where you can actually see the trucks driving around and see when they last reported in. And it's the database where you build those guys to commission them to this particular co-op, to this particular outage. And then here, this is showing those trucks and those crews. And what I did is I built this little symbol of a hard hat with a man so that we could tell that that is actually an app of a human that's driving around on the system, loaded onto their smart devices. And so here on the screen on the right, you see the actual guys at the location of the outage as it occurs. On the left, we see the path that the crew took to get to the outage, and so that you can see both what direction they're headed, how they got there, and help guide foreign crews into outages so that they can be more effective, and so that you can keep them safe. So here is when Hurricane Irma hit. There was widespread outages throughout their service territory. They were greatly affected by the storm. And this is me just stepping outside during this event when we had all the crews hunkered down because it was just too dangerous to even have crews out working at this point. Here we go. So now this was the Operations Control Center up here on the top right at Excelsior EMC. They were very prepared for this storm. They had lived through Hurricane Matthew, and they had learned a lot about how to manage crews and about how they needed to operate during the disaster mode, and they were very prepared. They had 9 workstations set up where they could divide the crews amongst them and focus on their crews. And down here in the bottom screen, that's me within their center, and then over to the right is Nelson sitting at a dispatch station. When we were first setting up Nelson, it was critical that I had Nelson involved because he did a lot of the setup and a lot of learning how to run the system in this new environment. Now let's hear what FEMA had to say during that time.
This issue is passing through. There's large-scale power outages and almost 1 million people in Georgia without power today as well. But we have been working with our partners at the Department of Energy to pre-stage power crews, not only in Florida, but all over the southeastern United States. But let me reiterate, It takes a long time for this infrastructure to come back up. It may take multiple days, if not weeks, in some areas, as we've been saying before the storm hit.
So just to talk about the numbers at Excelsior EMC, at the peak, they had around 18,500 meters off. 150 men and women responded through mutual aid, and that includes their own crews as well. So Excelsior and the mutual aid, and some of these guys came from Kentucky and Oklahoma, so obviously they weren't familiar with the territory or even familiar with the terrain of that particular area. The types of crews that came in were assessors for assessing how bad the damage was, tree trimmers, service bucket trucks, and then diggers for replacing broken poles. And within 72 hours, they did have their system return to a normal state. And just some of the quotes on the right there is, with the help of mutual aid, crews and contractors, Georgia co-ops brought back power to more than 550,000 meters in less than 6 days after Hurricane Irma walloped every corner of the state. And then you see there where they said there's 4,500 men came to help Georgia through mutual aid from 15 other states. And it was a massive effort. Crews came from as far away as Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and Texas and Oklahoma. So in the meantime, they were getting a handle on things at Excelsior. I've received a call from Altamaha EMC, which is a sister co-op that butts up to Excelsior. And they don't have quite the same technologies that Excelsior has in place. For instance, they don't have an outage management system. And so when I arrived over there to try to help them, they were printing out maps, and they were printing out call tickets, and they were stacking call tickets on tables around the co-op based on the sub, feeder, and phase. So I simply watched what they were doing for a little while to understand their existing process and to figure out how we could turn that into a digital process. And we successfully did that. So we have a box sitting in their network that allows us to gather multi-speak messages from their two-way AMI system. We're able to take those messages and post them into a dashboard. We call that dashboard NRTC Wiser Solution. And then those meters are broken down by sub, feeder, and phase and displayed into Google Earth. So now they can focus in on their worst performing feeders and provide some prioritization to getting the outages back on as quickly as possible without relying on stacks and stacks of paper to get it done. So we also posted a couple of articles into LinkedIn, and there was a lot of interest with those articles, which is interesting that between the two articles we've had over 2,750 views. So I was pretty impressed with that. It shows, I guess, there's quite an interest in these types of humanitarian efforts, and I'm just glad that I was able to play a small role in keeping those crews safe. So the folks over at cooperative.com and Daryl Hawley, the staff writer there, did a really good job of writing an article up about this effort that we did with Excelsior and with Altamaha. And there's some good quotes in there about the value of the project from both of those co-ops. I would encourage you to go to this link and to go read that article for more information as well. There's also some similar efforts going on by the Electric Power Research Institute, or EPRI, using the Common Information Model within their working group 61968 Part 3, which focuses in on network operations for outage detection and fault location isolation and supply restoration. I've talked to those folks about what I've done. They're looking to see how they can demonstrate similar efforts as what was done with multi-speak here with the Common Information Model as well. I appreciate you taking the time today to watch this video and to listen to this presentation. There's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions. And also there's all the different links of the different parties that participated in this effort. And I just thank you for your time.